So, why are we here? We're here to celebrate a friend and a colleague and to learn something. Jason Bingham has written and published a book that stands to have far-reaching implications in shaping the way businesses strategically develop their cultures to drive results. And because we know him, we get to hear the message and get a sneak peek of the book before it hits the stores. He and I serve on the Virginia Western Educational Foundation, and we share a passion for education and performance excellence. And I am so very lucky to work with Jason both civically and professionally. Jason epitomizes his own advice. He has grown through the organization of Train from district manager for the company's Virginia district to vice president of customer strategy to his current position as vice president of Train North America and is responsible for a $1.2 billion central territory. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Tennessee, and although he's not a Virginia native, he and his lovely wife Shelby and their 3 very talented children have made Roanoke their home since he was recruited by Virginia Train District. Under his leadership and guidance, Train has created a winning culture globally, nationally, and regionally, which has led to exceeding business expectations every year for his 22-year career. But despite his demanding schedule, he has served the Roanoke community on many boards and many organizations, including the Roanoke City School Board, Mill Mountain Theater, Roanoke Valley Business Council, Virginia Western Educational Foundation, as I mentioned, and he has chaired the MS Dinner of Champions. He's also a member of Ingersoll Rand's Global Culture Committee and the company's National Sales Council. And since our senior pastor is here, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Jason has served on the session of Second Presbyterian Church, chaired its Personnel Committee, and has taught leadership in a Sunday school class made up of people highly involved in business and the community. And every year, he teaches a seminar to newly ordained ministers about building and guiding a staff to help a church live its vision. And as a Virginia Western Foundation board member, he helped establish Roanoke City's Community College Access Program, or otherwise known as CCAP, during his tenure on the school board. And for those of you who aren't familiar with CCAP, it's a scholarship program that enables all high school seniors that meet certain academic and financial criteria the ability to attend Virginia Western tuition-free. Both Ingersoll Rand and Train are charter members of CCAP. And Jason puts his words into action every day to be a leader, educator, and team member. You're about to witness his performance as he shares the strategies in his life and business that you can use in yours. So please join me in welcoming Jason Bingham as he introduces Cultureship The ACBs of Business Leadership.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Cynthia. That was one heck of an opening. Not sure I'll live up to that, so if you'd lower your bar, that would be great. Very excited to be here, really for a couple of reasons. One is Virginia Western, recognizing the role they play in our community and in the Roanoke Valley. It's huge. If you consider that 80%, over 80% actually, of the kids that go to Virginia Western stay in this valley, you recognize pretty quickly the contribution they make to our valley and our future, and also specifically the contribution they make in leaders for our valley and for the future of our valley. So I want to thank Virginia Western for what they do. I'm also obviously excited about my book. Been working hard on it, and it comes out in January. It's called Cultureship, The ACBs of Business Leadership. Cultureship is the combination of culture and leadership, and maybe even an advanced form of leadership that would help individuals succeed in both their personal and professional lives. As I looked back on my career, and many of the people here in this room taught me a lot, and as I look back on that, I learned some core beliefs. And I put those beliefs into a system of beliefs that is cultureship. The ACBs is not an editorial faux pas. It is ACB, and it's in that order for a reason: associates, customers, and business, and we'll talk more about that. What I want you to know is as you hear these beliefs, as you hear these stories, cultureship is not just for the business. It is professional and personal. And my girls are here today, so we got their picture to make fun of them. It truly is lessons I've learned in my entire life. And so I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. As you hear these beliefs, recognize that they can help you in your entire life, not just in your business life. What is culture? To me, in two simple pictures, it is a bubble above our heads. So a team, a company, a family, what is it that they believe about how things get done around here that then guides their actions and decisions? So you walk into your office building, and immediately, whether you know it or not, you've got some beliefs about how things get done around here. And that certainly guides your behaviors, your actions, your decisions. So it turns into the culture of that organization. As an example, if you walk into that building and you believe teamwork is a priority around here, then you're going to serve your associates. If somebody's sick, you're going to help them out. If somebody's overloaded, you're going to give them some extra effort. It's going to be natural for you because you have that core belief that teamwork is really, really important around here. On the other hand, if you walk in that building and you believe that individual performance is what matters around here, you're going to behave slightly differently. And there's going to be two different cultures that exist. You probably can picture or maybe even been a part of two different cultures like that. And that is the reason why culture is directly connected to results. It is our actions that determine our results. It is our lack of action that can determine our results. If we decide to sit on the couch all day and eat bonbons, we will get a result, right? We'll get large, and not large from a good business sense. On the other hand, if we decide to get off the couch, work out, eat well, we're going to get healthy. The actions determine our results, and therefore that is the direct connection between culture and business results. I firmly believe, through many different examples and lessons in my life, that culture is the greatest driver of business results. So the question becomes, how do you actually drive culture? This little purple dude flying in is the answer to that question. Every person in the culture, that's what this purple dude represents. Every associate in the culture has the opportunity to impact the culture because of the experiences they provide each other. As they walk, as they talk, as they do things, there are people in that culture, in that team, in that company, in that family that are watching. And that person, every one of the people in that team, influences each other about how things get done around here. But more importantly, and in some cases most importantly, the leader is the greatest influence on the culture. The leader, compared to the other associates, has authority. And because they have authority, they have a much greater influence. And so the leader really is a big representation of this purple little dude. Because of how the leader walks, talks, directs, decides, listens, whatever they do is highly influential on how things get done around here. And so, what is the leader doing to build that culture? Who do they go to lunch with every day? Who do they not go to lunch with? Who comes in their office when they make a decision? Who's excluded from those decisions? All of those things have a huge impact, huge influence on how things get done around here. But the leader not only impacts the bubble above the head, the leader also impacts the actions of our feet. The leader, if they're conscious about culture, can arm that culture in a substantial way. They can see actions that are aligned with the culture they're trying to create, and they can allow them, they can reward them, and they can model a response behavior that continues them. They can arm that culture. Vice versa, if the behaviors are negative or contrary to the culture they want, they cannot allow them, not reward them, and not model a sustaining behavior. Or they can decide to do nothing about it, and through their condoning behavior, actually create the reverse culture that they actually desire. So the key question now is, what do we really want to have? I mentioned that the leader has the ultimate responsibility for culture because of their authority, but I want you to stop short of thinking that the leader owns the culture. What we want, what every leader should want, is that the associates own the culture. There's a huge difference between the leader having the ultimate responsibility and the associates owning the culture. And the difference is what I would call legacy. As a leader is in an organization, builds a high-performing culture, if that culture is all about them, when they leave, what happens? The culture goes, right? The new leader comes in and a brand new culture comes in because the behaviors change, the experiences change. But As you'll learn later, as I learned in the Roanoke office, when the associates own the culture, now you have a legacy. Now you have people that have felt and tasted the great high-performing culture, and they're willing to fight for it, no matter which goofy leader comes in next. And so the concept that the leader has ultimate responsibility stops slightly short of ownership. Leaders should have the ultimate goal of having the ownership of that culture by the associates. Until we get to that point, we have to get conscious about the culture we want. And so this is what my book does. It focuses in on the beliefs required of leaders and of associates to develop a high-performing culture. It looks back on my experiences and the many things I've screwed up and gotten right, and pulls out the core beliefs that need to be existent in every company and every professional and business team to decide a high-performing winning culture. It puts those beliefs into a subset of 10 beliefs. You have 4 foundational beliefs, 3 structural beliefs, and 3 ultimate beliefs. And then you get the tools and stories behind it to help you live those beliefs yourself. I said a lot there, so let me make sure I'm clear. A lot of pictures, but there's only 3 key messages. 1, the definition of culture. It is the beliefs a team has about how things get done around here that guide your actions and decisions. That clear definition, if you set it over and over again to your team, will do amazing things because they'll feel comfortable talking about culture. 2, the leader has the ultimate responsibility for defining and leading that high-performing culture. And 3, at the end of the day, we want the associates to own that culture. So if that's the deal, and if that's the beliefs, or you're starting to get an understanding of the aim of my book, let's go ahead and hit the ultimate beliefs. We don't have the time to go through all 10. I think you'd probably worn out at that point, so instead we're just going to focus on these 3, which are the ultimate beliefs. I'm going to tell you some stories of how I learned these, how they were taught to me. But I want to quickly go through them now so that can kind of get your head rolling around them. The first one is that culture is directly connected to business results, and that culture can change quickly. If all of the leaders in the organization believe this, then they will spend their time there. They will change the culture. It will happen quickly. The results will happen quickly. Lo and behold, it will happen. The second one, this concept of enlightened teams, which I'll explain later, achieve superhuman results. Just suffice it to say that if your leaders believe in the power of teamwork, they'll spend a lot of time there, they'll develop high-performing teams, and lo and behold, they'll get some incredible results. The third one is the ACBs. Purposeful associates create loyal customers who deliver premier business results. Again, if our associates and our leaders believe this, every decision they make will make sure that it balances the A's, the C's, the B's. Everything they do will be trying to enhance the lives of the A's, the C's, the B's. And it also recognizes that it is a sequence. It's the A's that create the C's that create the B's. And so if we have a B problem, we're going to back up and ask ourselves what we're doing right and wrong with the A's and the C's before just giving a B answer. It's a big difference, although minute in 3 letters. It's a huge difference, but can drive an entire culture of, in my case, an entire company. So let's get into it. How did I learn this stuff? Well, I had some really smart people teaching me it, and so where it started is in Huntsville, Alabama, actually. My wife and I and our 3 kids were in Huntsville. Alex was 6, or Catherine was 3, Bailey was 1. It was that time of life where the kid, you're chasing them around the living room and the backyard versus the soccer fields and ballet, right? It was a fun life. You had other families with you were in the same situation. You were close together because everybody had to kind of guard the kids from electrical outlets and stuff. When you went to restaurants together, you made each other feel good about the destruction that happened in the restaurant. It was really a great time of life. And then I got the call. Some dude named Tom in corporate said I was on some list, and this incredible leader named Jess Newbern was retiring, and they needed a leader to come to Roanoke. And I said, well, didn't even know there was a list. I appreciate the call. Want you to know I'm not moving. I'm very happy where I am. But if you want to waste your money on a plane ticket, I'd be happy to go. He said, okay, can you go on Thursday? I said, well, okay. So I went home and talked to Shelby and said, hey, I'm on some list. Don't want to get off that list. So I'm flying to some place called Roanoke. She said, where the heck is that? And I said, well, let's look it up. I don't know. And we kind of found it on a map. And I said, but don't worry, we're not moving. Everybody obviously knows where this is going. So I flew to Roanoke, and I walked into this building. Hopefully you've seen it before. It's off of 581, right in the middle of Countryside. And I got chills right now thinking about it. It was a powerful experience. You walked in and you felt that culture right there. The high-performing culture wasn't just in its results. It was in the air. You walked right in and you felt it. The people were happy yet purposeful. They were committed to each other. They were serving me. Some guy just walked in. The other powerful thing that I didn't really recognize until I looked back on it was the questions they were asking me in the interview process. They were certainly asking the experience questions, the skills questions, that kind of stuff. But much more than that, they were asking, what are your beliefs about culture? What do you think leadership is? What are your values as a human being? They were digging into would I fit in this culture or not. And so that's kind of what I left that building with. And I got in the Roanoke Airport on Friday, and I'm heading back, and I pulled out my Motorola flip phone. You guys remember those black phones? I thought it was the coolest phone ever. It was really cool. And I pulled my phone out and called Shelby, and she said, hey, how did it go? And I went, man, it was something. She said, quote unquote, oh shit, we're moving, aren't we? Sorry, Shelby. And as always, she was right. We were moving. And so now I walked back into this building, and the image I want you to get there is I walked in with a bubble of my head that was completely wrong about leadership. I had been a team leader, but this was my true transfer from individual contributor to team leader to true leadership position. And I walked into this building now with a bubble in my head that was completely contrary to the culture. And in fact, as I look back, I was doing all I could to screw it up. I was beating my head against the wall. I was getting up at 3, sometimes 2 in the morning, not getting home till 7 or 8, and quite frankly, getting nothing accomplished. In fact, I felt like I was making it worse. I felt like I was failing. And after about 6 months of beating my head against the wall, a lady named Tammy Swaim came in my office. She was a project administrator for our contracting division. And she said, Jason, a few of us have gotten together, and I think a few of you are in the crowd right now, and we have some concerns about where our culture is going. And again, my head is red from beating my head against the wall, and so I'm a little more able to listen at this point. And I said, all right, Tammy, what do you want to talk about? Well, come in the room. So I go into the room, and I'm not exaggerating. They have a full PowerPoint presentation built. They sit me down, and in the first few slides, they describe specifically the culture that we have here in Roanoke. In the next few slides, they describe specifically the behaviors that would indicate we're living that culture. And in the next few slides, they describe specifically behaviors that had happened over the last 3 months that were contrary to that culture. And in the last slide, they describe specifically behaviors I had done in the last 3 months that were contrary to our culture. That's the orange block I was telling you about a slide ago. They owned the culture. And they loved it so much they were willing to fight for it. They were not going to let this goofy leader screw it up. And so they sat me down and described for me what I needed to change. And that was the start of me becoming a culture leader. I woke up a little bit. I still got a lot wrong, but I started to get more right. And over time, that group taught me how to lead culture. And we became very successful. Jess Newbern built an incredible business that rivaled even the big cities of Dallas, New York, LA. Well, we actually were able to double that business in 3 years because we worked on culture just as hard as Jess did. So that was a key lesson for me, and as we were successful, the next great blessing for me was the opportunity to go to the right side of the state. As you're successful, you get another phone call. Tom calls again and says, hey, we'd like you to run Virginia now. And so where I had the left side of the state of a high-performing culture, my first great blessing of being able to be in the middle of that culture, and one of the reasons I wrote the book so I could pay forward that blessing that I had in being in Roanoke, I now had the opportunity of the right side of the state. And if you think about it from my career perspective, it was a perfect next step because that culture was not a high-performing culture. It was great people, but the leader of that culture was very mediocre at best. His statement for the culture was, you don't want to be a top performer because they're going to come by and spend a lot of your time trying to get best practices. And you don't want to be a bottom performer because they're going to come by and spend a lot of your time beating you up. Instead, you want to be right in the middle. His idea of culture was, let's be mediocre. And there were some other dysfunctions there as well. So I walked in trying to figure out what to do, but I knew from my lessons in Roanoke that I was going to lead with culture. And so I walked in talking about culture, even at the novice that I was. And again, I didn't get it all right, but they saw in my heart and in my actions that I was committed to leading with culture. And it happened. Things started changing, and it was pretty darn exciting. And I remember about 6 months in, another lady, a brilliant lady, Diane Martin, came in my office, and she said, "Jason, I got to thank you." I said, "Tell me." She said, what's going on?" She said, "The energy around here is fabulous, and our performance is changing, and the teamwork's improving. It's really cool." I said, "Well, thanks. That's great." She said, "But you're screwing up." Here we go again, right? And I said, "Okay, tell me about that." And she said, "Well, right now, to me, you own this culture. And I believe if we're going to be successful, we need to own it." And she was again reminding me of the orange square. And I said, "Diane, you're absolutely right. How do we do that?" And she said, "I want to start a culture committee." And I said, "Go, run with it." So she pulled together a team. It ended up being across all of Virginia. They called it the Virginia Way. And it became the owners of the culture. They drove, they decided, they directed me on what we were going to do next. And that ground level ownership came from across the entire district, came from that original discussion with Diane. So incredible results. It's the core lesson I learned in that experience is that A, culture is directly connected to business results. And B, you can change that culture quickly and it will change your results quickly. The proof of that, the way we did that was really 3 key pieces. And when I say we, it was we, not me. There was 3 key pieces we got that performance. First is culture clarity. How can you provide the right experiences and arm the culture unless you know the culture you're trying to create? Culture clarity is 3 pieces. It's where we're going together, the vision, what we do together, the mission or purpose, and how we agree to behave together, the guiding principles. We put all of that together. We put it on a culture card. We gave everybody in the whole organization a culture card so it was front and center all of the time. The second thing we did was focus intently on that bubble above our leaders' heads. If we had a bunch of Jasons walking in with the wrong bubble, we were going to screw it up. And so instead, we needed to make sure all the bubbles were right. We actually created 3 leadership development curriculums, one aimed at all associates in the culture, in the team, one aimed at leaders by title, managers, and one aimed at people that wanted advanced training. And that was substantial in driving our culture. And then the third piece, we didn't fully understand this when we did it, but as we look back, this was a very powerful piece, and that was individual contribution. That course I told you that was developed or was aimed at any associate in the company to develop their leadership, ended up also building an awareness of my individual strengths. And when I had an awareness of that, I had a clarity of how I contributed to that culture, that individual contribution. And that became really powerful as by the time I left, we had over 70% of the associates had gone through that class, and a much more greater awareness of how important I as an individual am to the success of this culture. And we'll talk more about that here in a minute. This last point is very critical. I don't want you to perceive the only thing we did was work on culture. That's not the case. We have plenty of financials coming at us. I would suggest to you, the majority of your businesses, the most mature process is your business financial process. You get it coming at you monthly, if not weekly, if not daily. It is barraging you in the emails. It's every day in every way. We had that, and we're very good at that. The point is, we put a succinct effort at putting as much, if not more effort on culture as well. We put these 3 pieces in place that balanced those emails, that pressure, so that all of our leaders were balanced across the ACBs. And when we did, we got incredible results. Denison, which is the first tool I'll give you, is a culture survey, a real inexpensive way to measure quantitatively your culture. I use it everywhere I go now, and we used it in Virginia for the first time. And even after coming from maybe not the highest performing culture in Richmond, we were now, as an entire team, a very high performing culture. I won't go into the details of this Denison survey. Suffice it to say, the more colors you have, the better you are. And we had almost all the colors. Extremely high performing culture by quantitative metrics. But the business metrics were just as substantial. In 2008, 2009, 2010, some of the toughest economic times we have ever seen, we exceeded budget. In fact, we were the only office to exceed budget. And just to point out, I wasn't even the district leader in 2010. It wasn't about me. It was about that culture and that team who were achieving incredible results. You see some of the other incredible results they had for a small state with smaller populations compared to New York's and California's. Can you imagine? They are number one across the board in many of these areas. Really amazing business results. So now, you've listened to me for a little while. It's time to cast your vote. You've got 3 balls in front of you, 3 different colors. You've heard about culture. You've heard about this first belief. And now it's time to cast your vote without hurting a lot of people, if at all possible. So look through these. And all of these are right. There is no wrong answer, okay? And in fact, I believe all of these very strongly. But as you look at, do you believe culture can change quickly? Do you believe culture is personal and professional? Do you believe that culture is directly connected to results? If you had to pick one that you most believe in, pick that color ball, put it in your hand, and we're going to throw those now at my feet. There we go. Holy crap. Okay, not yet. Just kidding. All right, I don't even know what we're looking at yet. Lots of orange. Okay, cool. So you believe. Somebody trying to get on the bandwagon? Who did that? There we go. All right, I like it. Yeah, I see lots of orange. So, by the way, the reason we do this, you guys are excited and threw right away. That was fabulous. The reason we do this is to, A, let you kind of introspectively think about which one I'm really attaching to, and then B, think about or look and see what the rest of the group is attaching to so we can kind of learn from each other. I do see a ton of orange, so this one seems to connect. And I'd tell you that if that's true, and it's true in your company, people will spend time there. The next big one is if you could believe that blue one. If you get the blue and the orange one, you truly will get a lot of emphasis on culture. So we do have a lot less blue here. So that's indicative of, I don't fully believe it goes quickly. And I understand that because I'm not sure that's ever been said. I think the opposite has always been said, that it takes forever to change a culture. I think that's what you've heard the majority of. I've heard it too. I want to push on that a little bit. And I think if you read my book, you'll see the reason why we push is because it can change quickly. Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for not hurting anybody. I appreciate that. I do recognize, by the way, you need to stay in your day jobs. You people are not very good throwers. Let's go to the second belief and where I learned that. And honestly, I learned this one in multiple different places. The next job I had after the Virginia district manager was the vice president of strategy for Train North America. And I pulled a team together of disparate people. We didn't know what we were doing, but we created an enlightened team that had incredible results. I also saw it in the Roanoke office. Some of you know David Smith. He built a team that he truly focused on building an enlightened team. He didn't know what that was at the time, but that's what he did. And he moved a team that was making or selling about $400,000 a year to $4 million a year within about 3 years. So I've seen it happen. The example I want to tell you today is a little more local to here. It's Roanoke Community College Access Program. And if you think about that, what that is students who graduate from high school who are prepared to go to college but cannot afford to go to college. We're going to pay for it. We don't give it to them for free. They've earned it, and they should be going, and so we should be paying for it. It is a no-brainer when you think about it. We're giving people hope in high school that before didn't have it. And so when they have hope, what? They're going to work harder. We're going to have a higher graduation rate. We're giving cities a higher quality of contributing citizens because we have a higher graduation rate and we have a higher level of workforce. Certainly the individuals and their families are a huge impact or positive impact to this. And businesses, we have a greater workforce for them to work on. And believe it or not, even in these challenging times, our industrial businesses are having a real challenge with getting a qualified workforce. This is a real no-brainer. So why isn't it happening more often? There are states that have tried to do this, cities, counties. It's tried. It's not a new idea, but rarely has it really happened. But it happened here. Why did it happen? It happened because they started by building an enlightened team. They didn't know it at the time, but they brought together all of these people, all of these entities, public and private, business and individual, city and schools. Some of these things that tend to conflict with each other came together in one room. And since we needed the resources from each one of them to be successful, if we didn't make it one team, we would have the same failing as everybody else that tried this, because it would tend to be conflicting. Instead, we started with one team. Everybody in the same room, 30 people around the table, and we first gave culture clarity. We gave the understanding of where we're going together, what we're going to do together, and how each of us needed to treat each other and behave together. That culture clarity I talked before. So an enlightened team, the first ingredient of an enlightened team is culture clarity, that thing we've already talked about. The second ingredient that we did in that team meeting was individual contribution. We walked person by person all the way around the table. David Carson, you were there. We walked all the way around that table, and every individual, no matter where they came from, talked about what they could do to make CCAP happen, their strengths and the role they played to make CCAP happen. That's the second ingredient of an enlightened team, individual contribution. As we're doing that, every other member started to recognize the importance of their teammates, what I call teammate contribution. So as we saw the individuals stating what their strengths were, the team started to see why we needed each and every member on that team. I can't do this alone. I need those people to get that done. And so that's the third ingredient, team contribution. When you put those three ingredients together, you will create an enlightened team. I've seen it happen over and over again. And you will create incredible, superhuman results, which is exactly what that team did. For something that has rarely ever happened, the idea is not new, but it's rarely ever happened, that team, from the day they left that meeting to the day CCAP was running and gunning, was less than 9 months. Truly unbelievable. But even more unbelievable, we have 300 kids today. One of them your daughter. 300 kids today that are getting a college education who would not be getting it 2 years ago. If you get the chance, and I was there a month ago, if you get the chance to be with those kids, you will be blown away. You will be inspired about our future, because these are kids who are working their tails off. They don't think they've gotten something for free. They think they've gotten a huge blessing they need to pay back, and they are working their tails off. 85% of those kids are some of the greatest kids I've ever met in my life, barring my kids. And I was walking out of that room completely inspired about where our valley is going. So superhuman results for sure, as an example here for the CCAP program. The third belief, and this is the belief it was really thread through all of my career, the A's, the C's, the B's. You've already kind of heard it, but it really came to life for me when I got into the career I'm in now, the role I'm in now as Vice President of Central Territory. I took this job not because it was a promotion. I did get a phone call. It wasn't Tom this time, but I did get a phone call, and they said, we got the opening of Vice President. Would you be interested in applying? And my first answer was no. I was in this strategy role. We were doing some neat stuff. This enlightened team was getting some really cool results, and I didn't feel like we were done yet. And so my first answer was, I don't think I'm ready yet. I want to finish this. But the more I thought about it, and the second call I got, I realized this is the third great blessing I could have. Where I'd been in Roanoke, it's a huge blessing to see and be a part of a great culture, and then be in Virginia to help practice building a culture as the main leader of the business. Now was my opportunity to be a leader of a company, a leader of leaders who are the most influential, to see if I could build a culture for a company. Could you build a high-performing culture for a company rather than just a district? And that's truly why I took this job, and that's truly where the ACBs became a core answer to the equation. So guess what? As I got the job, you got 7 different district managers and a staff of 6 other people. I immediately go visit the offices, and did I talk about any numbers in my first 2 visits? No. I talked about culture, talked about leadership's responsibility. We talked about leadership development. We did town halls with all associates where the only thing we talked about was culture. It was really refreshing. The feedback I got was, holy cow, he didn't talk about the financials. He only talked about culture. That's pretty cool. And so we started this concept that culture was okay to talk about and certainly okay to lead with. We also jumped into each office's quantitative metrics of culture. So I invested in Denison and measured every business. These are 5 of the 7 businesses. You can see what I had. I had a top left business that was a high-performing culture. By the way, the highest performing business as well in Central Territory. By the way, this one, the most productive business in all of Train North America. Culture is directly connected to business results. I also had the top right one, what Denison calls the donut of doom. And it sure enough was. So I spent a lot of time there. I was there once or twice a month for the first 3 or 4 months. I was working with that district manager there, trying to help them understand the ACBs versus maybe the BBBs they've been living in the past. And they were trying to build a better culture. They were trying to affect it. And about 3 or 4 months into it, I sat down with the leader. I said, I'm not getting a great sense that we're moving forward. What if we did a pulse survey of the culture to see if over the last 3 or 4 months if you've gotten anything to happen? And he said, great, let's do it. So we set up a meeting. It was 2 or 3 weeks later on a Tuesday, I remember that. And then we ordered the pulse survey. And on Friday before that meeting, I got the results of that survey. And they were worse. Not only that, but there was an opportunity for associates to provide specific comments. And the comments were horrible. And many of them aimed at this leader. And so all weekend long, it is filling my head. I'm worried. I've been in this job 4 or 5 months. Am I going to fire a district manager? That almost never happens. What am I going to do? And it was swirling in my head. It was a lot of tension that weekend. I fly to this city on Monday. I get into my rental car that afternoon, and it is pouring rain. The kind of rain where your windshield wipers can't keep up, and when you got them on high speed, you slow down just so you can kind of see out there. I think I'm getting close to my hotel. I'm not really sure. And I'm not kidding you, the rain stopped. So my head is still swirling with what am I going to do tomorrow morning, but the rain stopped. And the hotel, Hilton, was right in front of me. And there was a rainbow, not kidding, that ended at the hotel. If you don't believe me, there's the picture I took. I went, holy crap, just like Shelby, pulled out my phone and took the picture. There's the Hilton. You can see that it was really wet. The rain had just stopped. And doesn't it look like the rainbow ends at the hotel? Let me break away from the discussion a little bit and say I believe in God winks, that God talks to us often, and he winks at us when we're going the right way or when we need a little adjustment. At this point, I needed a little adjustment. And I think God was telling me in a very visual way to me, it's okay. Calm down. Just look. Be clear, the answer will become evident. And so I took that message, that God wink, and I walked into to the leader's office on Tuesday morning, and we talked. And we talked for quite a while. And we looked at the survey, and we asked the tough questions, and we went through each of those very candid remarks of the associates. And then we started saying, what are we going to do about this? And I watched. And it was clear to me that he was still BBB, that he was not ACB. I'd say, how are we going to change this? And he'd say, don't worry. I'm going to get everybody to understand how important the business results are. Okay, I get that. But how are we going to change the culture? We're going to change the culture because we got a complete commitment to changing the business results. It was answer after answer that was that same kind of theme. And it became visually clear to me that this was not the right leader. And I told him that, right, around 3.5 hours into the discussion. I'm sorry, I've got to stop you. There's a group of 200 people in this district that are counting on me to make a right decision, and I don't believe right now you're the right leader. I need to stop and think about that. I'll get back to you on Friday. And sure enough, I called him on Friday and told him I was replacing him. Not an easy thing at all to do. But the good news is we put a new young leader in there with a lot of potential, and that circle you saw back here now looks like this. 6 months later, looks like that. Not only that, but the business results. This district has the highest leverage. Leverage being when you grow your business, what % of it can you bring to the bottom line operating income? So what can you use your existing force to do new business with so that you can get more profit? Number one leverage in all of Train North America. Culture is directly connected to business results, and it can happen quickly. Sure enough, happened quickly here. What did we do? The Central Territory got together in multiple meetings over that first 4 months. Here's a core lesson for me and for all of us. Every meeting we talked about culture, we talked about leadership development, and we even talked about individual contribution. The third meeting, And I've seen this happen over and over again. It happened in my previous role. It happened in Train North America when my boss asked me to take some responsibility for developing culture. The third meeting after you talk about culture, it will take off on its own. The first meeting you bring up culture, people are kind of nodding. The second meeting you bring up culture, they'll ask a few questions. The third meeting, they feel very safe that this is something we can talk about, and I actually like it. They naturally attract to it, and they will lead the discussion for you. That's exactly what happened in the Central Territory. In our third meeting, again, starting with culture, I had planned a 90-minute portion of my agenda to go through culture, and it turned into 4 hours, run by them. They started creating culture clarity. They decided on their vision and mission and guiding principles. The vision, by the way, was the ACBs. We want to be the best place to work, the A's. We want to be the best place to buy, the B's. We want the best place to invest, the C's. They created the ACBs, and from that started saying ACB. And that simple term made it easy for everybody to grab a hold of. That makes a lot of sense. Every decision should balance the ACBs. And that spread through the territory very quickly. We also, in every meeting, worked on leadership development. We also agreed as a team we were going to develop the leaders within the districts. 46 of our leaders in the Central Territory went through a new leadership development program last year that we created. And then we've started the course around individual contribution that we built in Virginia. All three of these pieces happened, and what's now happening within the last 3 months is we're getting very mature in that process. We're adding tools, some of them I'll show you soon, that is getting to that associate ownership piece, which to me is the ultimate goal. So that's what we've done, and it's gotten incredible results. In 2011, we're the only territory to exceed budget. In 2012, we're the only territory to be exceeding budget today. And as it looks like in our forecast, we'll be the only, and hopefully that's true, only territory to exceed budget in 2012. We have the highest operating income percent, which means we're the most effective organization. And that was not true. We were the lowest in 2010. And we have the highest leverage. The growth is dropping to the bottom line better than any other territory. And in fact, that bottom one, we're 3 times more leverage than any other territory. Powerful results driven by a team that's leading with culture, creating culture clarity, leadership development, and individual contribution. So now it's time to cast your vote again. You've now heard all 3 beliefs. You've got 2 balls left, right? Unless you steal from a bag in front of you. You've only got 2 balls left, so you've only got 2 choices. You have to pick between one of those 2 colors. By the way, the last ball you can keep and take home with you. If you got kids, you can come collect some of these other ones and bring them to you as well. But again, no wrong answers. As you look at these 3 and the 2 choices you have, which one would you choose? Aim up there. You know what? I'm not going to know what the difference is now. Cynthia, I found a flaw in our system. I don't know. I'm sorry. I have no idea at this point. Anybody want to have a comment of which one you picked and why? A lot of risk there, right? Yeah.
I picked people within the culture can change. And the reason is because I think what you said clearly so far is that they need to own it, and I can influence it, but eventually it's going to be them pushing it and guiding me through the mistakes I'm making. Those are great stories.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you. And that, to me, is the most powerful one. I'm going to tell you right now, this is the hardest one to get to. But when you get a high-performing culture, you'll get Dianes that come and say, I want to take it. You have to get it to that level. You have to get the bubbles in the leaders' heads right. But you can get this, and it is the paramount goal. If we can get that, we now have a legacy for our entire business. Thank you for speaking up. So hopefully you at least had some introspection about these 3, which one you attached to naturally. Sorry you didn't get to see how others voted. We'll fix that in our system next time. And thanks for not hurting me. That was great. I want to end with some action for you. I want to end with some clarity so that when you walk out these doors, hopefully you'll do something slightly different. I assume many of you are already cultural leaders, but maybe this will help you advance that process a little bit. And so how do I set you up for success? First, think about the overall process. You have to assess where you are first. Denison survey is a great way to do that. If you're talking about your family, assessing where you are could be a simple dinner discussion about how do we treat each other around here? You know, how are things going around here? Opening up and having the courage to talk with your family about those kind of subjects would be and can be powerful and is a way to assess what's going on. Then you need to create culture clarity. What is it that we want out of our culture? What is it that we want out of our family unit? Pretty easy discussion, right? We want to be great. We want this to happen. We want to treat each other with respect. A lot of common things will pop out. You got to pick what you want. You got to define it so that you can lead it. And even maybe most importantly, you need to pick the 2 or 3 focus areas you're going to try to change in the coming year. You can't change it all. So after you've done culture clarity, pick the focus areas that we're going to try to make happen, these changes in behaviors we're going to try to make happen in the coming year. Then we got to mobilize and align leaders. Until we get that, we can't get the next one. I wish we could start there, but if we got a bunch of wrong bubbles around the leaders' heads, we're never going to get the associate ownership. And so you got to get here. Get the bubbles right, get that culture clarity right, get those focus areas right so that the leaders are leading through experiences and arming of that culture so that it'll change, so that it's exciting, so that you get the associates to own it, which is the last and the powerful piece of a legacy there. That's the overarching, overriding culture plan. You can build your culture plan off of this. It can generally be a 3-year plan. You will change your culture after 6 months, but you'll see it continually evolve over that entire 36 months. There are maturity tools that can help you succeed. We talked about Denison. I assume it's denison.com or something, but go to it. It's relatively inexpensive and a great way to add quantitative metrics to culture. The second one is culture clarity. I'll show you a card here in a second. I have started a website I'm going to post all these tools that you can go in and steal shamelessly from. No charge, just go on the website and you can pull them off. I've already highlighted an example card. It's the Virginia District, or actually the North America card now. Culture clarity card, so you can see an example and you can build it on your own. Leadership development courses in my book show specific leadership development courses. Key point here is you don't have to be an expert and you don't have to spend a lot of money. It's good if you get some experts and lots of money if you want to spend that, but if you don't and you want to make sure it sustains, it's pretty easy to build internal leadership dialogues, and I'll tell you how to do that in my book. The personal development piece is also in my book. It's a tool, and it's also something I'll post on the website. And then this final one here is this one that we've just started in the Central Territory that's getting to this maturity phase for us around associate ownership, so I want to hit that one. It's Performance Link, and it's a really cool website that has the tabs across the top that make it very easy for the leaders to define the focus areas they want. So you're trying to get the associates to own those focus areas, to live those behaviors, to arm the culture. And the way you do that is you define those focus areas and you set up a tool that enables the associates to recognize each other when they live those 3 changed behaviors, 3 or 4, whatever you decide. And you empower them and incentivize them to do that. Give them a point if they recognize and 5 points if they get recognized, for instance. However you want to do it, the tool is very flexible. And then they can collect points, they can go back into the tool and buy stuff just as a reward, that kind of thing. But the goal is people arming each other, providing experiences for each other, and taking ownership together of the culture. The tool makes it easy to manage that, and then at the end of the day, our hope is, we've just gotten it started. We're already seeing some incredible results. We're just getting it started, but our hope at the end of the day is we truly create this associate ownership. So tools like this can help you get that done. Here's an example of the culture card on the one side, and I have it in my wallet. It's always with me. On one side is the vision and mission. On the other side is the guiding principles, another example of how we can lead with culture and keep it front of mind. This is the graphic of my book. It has the core of the ACBs. Sitting on top of that is the foundational, structural, and ultimate beliefs. And to the right, you see the tools that I provide in the book to make it easy for you to implement and live these beliefs. I also am a Twitter guy now. My kids have taught me how to do this. I'm not good at it, but essentially all I do is 3 times a week I'll send out a thought on leadership. So if you'd like to get that thought just to kind of keep it front of mind for you, you can follow me on Twitter. Again, this is well beyond me, but I'm trying. And I also, when I add tools to the website, I'll tweet, is what you say, tweet that out so you can go and get that if it's interesting to you. The website's up and running. It's very fresh, so not mature yet, but it's up and running. And then obviously my book will be out in January. With that said, I think we're doing pretty well on time. Any questions before we end? Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain to us how business processes fit in with your Cultureship model?
Cultureship is an addition to, and actually a statement that we have to balance the business with the customers, with the associates. It's the ACBs. And so it doesn't replace what you do today and potentially only enhances it. What it does is adds to it. So at least my experience is we're very mature in business world about business processes, financials, and those type things. And the pressure can be almost overwhelmingly on the business. I don't want that to necessarily change. What I want to do is balance it much better, have a solid balance with the A's, and B's, so that the business processes we have today actually become more positive because we understand the A's and the B's as much as we are pressured to make the B's for every month and every quarter. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Why do you think the cultureship approach is not common?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think you said it when you threw the balls at me that we kind of believe that culture is connected results. I think almost everybody would nod their head on that, and I think that's why people naturally attract to this discussion when you bring it up. But we don't necessarily believe it happens quick, and we're not really clear how you measure culture, and we're not really clear what you do. And so it just becomes this statement that, yeah, culture is connected to results. I don't know what to do next. And so, again, I think the greatest thing anybody in this room can do, personally or professionally, is simply have the courage to talk about culture. And I promise you, if you do that 2 times, on the 3rd time you do it, you'll see it happen on its own. And then the answer to your question becomes a little more relevant that, oh, wow, we got a whole force that's really wanting to lead with culture, and now that we've talked about it, we're figuring out how to do that. Is that fair? One more question, and we got, yes, sir.
In your opinion, what is the first thing a leader should do to lead with culture?
Oh, good question. All right, I'm going to give the answer of self-awareness. If you are not self-aware, then you cannot provide the right experiences that are aligned with the culture you want, and you can't provide the arming that you need to do to arm that culture. So I think the first step is, are you self-aware of your strengths and weaknesses? Are you growing yourself? Are you recognizing how you impact and influence others? And then the second piece is, what is the culture you want to get? Have you defined that so that you can get this piece aligned with that piece and therefore start to move the culture? Any others? Are we out of time here? One more question. Yes, sir.
Servant leadership seems to be a fundamental foundational component
Yes,
to the
sir.
whole process. Can you give that a little color for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you're absolutely right. You're wise to pull that out. The leadership mentality in a cultureship company is servant leadership. We're trying to figure out how we serve the A's, C's, and B's versus trying to drive business results. We're trying to figure out how we serve the leaders that report to us so they can be better leaders. We're trying to create individual contribution, and so we're coaching our individuals and helping them identify their strengths and then connecting them to the right roles, what Jim Collins in Good to Great would say, putting the right people in the right seats so that the bus drives itself. It's all about a leader truly serving the best interests of an individual so that we serve the best interest of a customer and at the end get the business results. Couldn't agree more.